But why don't we talk about something else where the vibes are high with the Orioles, but there is a conversation that continues to be brought up, and that's the whole prospect and veterans. And what do you do with these talented prospects? And ESPN just had an article that came out that said possible trade candidates, and we'll read it for you for those that are listening. Trade candidates, according to ESPN, are Heston Kjerstad / Kobe Mayo. And it says, even with Jackson Holiday now up with the Major League team, the Orioles AAA lineup remains stacked, including top 100 prospects Kjerstad and Mayo. The Orioles already landed one frontline starter in Corbin Burns. Will general manager Mike Elias make a play for another one? Here's what I see. Kjerstad is an outfielder, also playing some first base. Mayo is a third baseman, playing some first. There's a reason for that. Neither is that good at those positions. Blah, 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 blah. They have Sam Basayo that plays catcher that will also play some first base down the road. Saying there's a log jam. The Orioles make another blockbuster trade for a pitcher. I think I responded with the gif of Dr. Evil talking to Goldmember. And again, Kevin, I don't know why I'm looking at you at this because you have no idea what I'm talking about. But Dr. Evil just goes, "How about no?" And then says, "You crazy Dutch bastard." But I guys, I told you this, the untouchables for the Orioles, these are two untouchables I don't think they're going to get rid of.
Yeah, I will say this. If either one of those is traded, it has to be not only a frontline starter, it has to be a frontline starter with years, not just this year, not just next year. We're talking 3 or 4 years, almost like it would have to be in the realm of a Cole Reagans type. Now, Cole Reagans is not on the market. I'm not saying that, but that's the type of player you would need to get in return for two, what I believe are top 5, top 10 prospects in the MLB. These guys do not grow on trees, and it is just one of those situations where I understand what ESPN is doing. Everyone wants the Orioles to go get pitching. Everyone thinks that the Orioles need to go get another starter. I think that we still have to wait and see guys like Means and Bradish, see where they're at. But in no way do I see, especially for a rental or a 1 or 2 year deal starting pitcher, I don't see them giving up Kobe Mayo or Heston Kjerstad. We've talked about it before with Kjerstad. He's a guy that we think is untouchable, and I think Kobe Mayo is exactly in that realm as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're young. They're young. Go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, I'm curious as to do we know who wrote this from ESPN?
I'm not sure.
I just saw it was on. We saw it on X initially from Cam Bryce, I believe, was the one. And I even said, Cam, this is not directed at you. When I said, how about no? And he's in agreement too. He feels the same way. But again, it's storylines, right? It's storylines.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I was curious because ESPN's very own Tim Kurkjian came on the show and talked about this here with us. I even asked Tim his own opinion on some of the guys like Mayo, Kjerstad, and guys that we thought there were non-negotiables that weren't going anywhere, and get his thoughts as well. So take a listen.
For Mike Elias, does that give him more, I guess, leverage for a trade? Let's just say if they want to, I mean, the pitching is pretty good already, but like if they want to add to that, is there somebody that you could see that like, okay, this makes sense as far as a trade, or do you think most of these guys are pretty non-negotiable? They're here and they're just going to have to wait their turn.
Well, they're going to wait their turn, and I wouldn't trade any of those guys yet. Now, if they start moving along this summer and things aren't going well and somebody gets hurt or Bradish doesn't come back, which I think he will, then you can use your resources and go get what you need. But I wouldn't trade those guys yet. Look, I'm so old. I go back to when Don Baylor hit like 350 and didn't get to the big leagues the next year. And Bobby Grich was an amazingly good player and spent another year at AAA when he should have been in the big leagues. Great teams are allowed the patience to wait for guys to completely be ready. But the Orioles are in a position where they can go get just about anyone they want from any team because of the resources they have in the minor leagues.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was very well said, and we've talked about it before on the show, Ryan. It's just like there's so much depth within the farm system that right now it's just way too early. You never know what injuries are going to pop up, where there's going to be needs, what players are going to fall off, if any. So I think it's just way too early to even consider making that call unless the O's are in some sort of desperation mode for a particular position.
And I do think I want to bring up this comment from Zach here because I think this kind of encapsulates it well. There isn't a rush right now. Wait for healthy starters coming up and make a trade close to the deadline. The thing that I've been saying for a really long time is, I mean, guys, we're in mid-April right now. The season just started. I feel like we're going to see how this next couple of months plays out. Injuries happen across the league. Maybe Baltimore has something, and knock on wood, obviously everybody stays healthy. But if there is an injury, then you can make that decision closer, where if you move on from guys, whether it is a Kurkjian or a Mayo or whoever you want to talk about in their system, and then you suddenly go through a rash of injuries, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, well, we had these guys, but now they're gone. So there's a time and a place. Plus, I think right now teams just aren't necessarily looking to move guys. I think teams are more willing to move players as the deadline gets closer, because then teams have a better idea of where they are. Teams that weren't projected to do super well as a whole coming into the year, some of them have great records right now. Maybe they're saying, can we make a wild card push? Can we make a playoff push? And maybe they want to hold on to their guys. But the Orioles system in general, I think, has this very unique thing about it, where if the Orioles want to go out there and make a trade, they have every type of prospect that a potential team could want. You want an MLB ready prospect for a guy? We have a couple of them for you. You want a guy that is in the middle of his development and could be ready in a year or two? We have that guy for you. You want a player that's a little raw right now but has high potential? We have that guy for you. The Orioles have so much depth and so much diversity in their system. And as I've said before, no team can go prospect for prospect like the Orioles can. So they have the ability, but that doesn't mean that they should just, okay, we have all these prospects, let's just move them for all this veteran help. It's a balance. Mike Elias understands that. Decision makers understand that. But I think it's just too early to talk about a trade right now because, I mean, literally, the season just started.
Well, and we talked about this, and we've tried to say this as well, and thank you as well. And we appreciate you. Thank you, Kevin. You better clap.
No, I'm
but
clapping.
Of the untradables in my mind, Mayo, Basayo, Heston, and obviously Jackson. Was I missing one? I'm blanking on my mind. But these are guys that are extremely talented. It's not that the other ones aren't going to get traded either. But when you're looking at this with the Orioles, things that you can't count on. You can't count on what happens in a season between struggles and injuries. You don't know what's going to happen. And you also don't want to make a move to be desperate. And for the Orioles, yes, I feel for every guy. And even Elias touched on it for the interview. Look, like, you want everyone to be in the big leagues, but you also have to understand of what you have. And just because you may need something doesn't mean you go and make a move just to make a move. Because if you make a move, you don't figure out what you have. And look at the last couple of years where the Orioles, by waiting things out, you bring up Ryan O'Hearn. Ryan O'Hearn looks pretty damn good for the Baltimore Orioles. And how about Yennier Cano? Cano comes up and he's a fixture. And again, these are things that are players that the Orioles fans didn't even think would be big-time players for the Orioles, but they are. And then Albert Suarez. I'm not saying that Suarez is going to be the next ace and that they should trade Corbin Burns, even though I did joke about that yesterday, and I think some people thought I was serious. But Suarez, again, it's a great story, and it's something that is cheap for the Orioles. You brought him in the offseason. It's paid off for you for one start. See what you have. See how your team's doing. And once you get into the summer and take a hard look, because the Orioles aren't trying to be good. And that was the thing that Elias said that got me. They're not looking at being even good for this next decade. They're trying to keep things going for as long as humanly possible. But they do understand when the time comes, they're going to have to make moves. So let's just keep that context there. We know it's all going to work out. But I do feel for the guys that are waiting. And to give context, this is something else I wanted to explain to people for the average age for guys on the roster. This was in 2023. I don't have the current one for 2024. But teams like the Dodgers last year, the average age was 30. Marlins, 30. Twins, 28. The Pirates are the youngest team at 26. The youngest average age was 26. The Orioles last year sat at towards the kind of the bottom tier, bottom third. Their average age was a little bit over 28. So giving you guys context of this. So even though Kobe Mayo and Heston look like they could be ready, doesn't necessarily mean that there's space. You know what the thing that I thought was fascinating? This is something, if you guys, please go back and watch this with Elias, of talking about because of the injuries with pitchers, that as much as the big league arms going from AAA to the bigs, those guys that are on that kind of shuffle, a lot of them aren't down there in his opinion. So the jump is even more drastic than it usually is. And the Orioles aren't in the business now to oh, well, we're trying to figure things out with certain guys. Yeah, they're going to understand that there's some leeway, but the Orioles are trying to win the American League East again. You know, they're trying to get to the World Series. So it's all context for these guys. So we will we'll keep revisiting that. And there's a lot of talent down there. But you don't make moves just to make moves.